Voyagers will return after these messages.
Welcome to Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. I'm Jonathan Friedmann.
And I'm Joey Angelfield.
Producer-engineer Mike Tomren is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Jewish Museum of the American West, and Atheists United Studios. Hey, Joey. One of the best ways to get to know someone is to interview them. That's the beauty of hosting an interview show, or two interview shows, as in the case of today's guest.
We're delighted to chat with Jonathan Rosen, co-host of Pop Culture Retro and host of The Jewish Lens, both of which are available as podcasts and on YouTube. He's also the author and editor of several books, including Night of the Living Cuddle Bunnies and Coming of Age, 13 B'nai Mitzvah Stories. Jonathan, welcome to Amusing Jews.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
You've been hosting Pop Culture Retro alongside former child actor Musi Dreyer since 2021. How did that show come about?
Okay, originally it wasn't Musi. I was hosting it with a different child actor. I don't know if you remember the Escape to Witch Mountain movies and Return from Witch Mountain. The star of that movie, Ike Eisenman. So I started hosting it with Ike. I became friendly with Ike several years ago, and we met through a mutual friend. And so we would talk. We were doing a project together, and I said, hey, it was also pandemic times. Hey, you ever think of doing a podcast? And so we started talking more about it, and we launched into it. And there was, talk about pop culture, interview some, celebrities from things that we liked as a kid. So we started doing that, and it started building slowly. And then, like around after I think 3 years, Ike wanted to pursue other things, like more writing. And so he was going to step down. And, I had met Musi through Ike. We had interviewed Musi on the show. Great guy. They're both great. Musi's fantastic also. And we hit it off. And so that was the first person I called. Like, this is around a year ago. Like, hey, would you be interested in taking over? And he did. And it's just been a blast. And I love getting to, host something with people that, I actually watched as a kid. Kid me would have been thrilled.
Someone's got to do a study on the effect of the pandemic on the proliferation of podcasts.
Probably true. Yes, I agree.
Ours is also a product of that time.
Yeah, and then it seems every day that I go on social media, someone else I know is like, oh, I'm starting one now, starting a podcast now.
You also sort of hit the nail on the head, because I think it was also a proliferation of nostalgia in the pandemic. So, yeah.
Well, nostalgia is always going to be there. I mean, I think so. That's one of the good things. Is especially the older we get, at least the older I get. It's like back in my day, and that's my kids hate that. But yes, I start thinking about all the things that when I was a kid too. So yeah, it hits a nice sweet spot with me and probably a lot of other people as well.
Yeah, and I noticed that with Pop Culture Retro, the majority of your guests are people that you grew up with also. So there's a generational aspect of it. And I'm sure the primary audience would be people of a similar age group. So there's like a familiarity and cohort that grows out of that too, which is very comforting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly it. And it's like, oh, people, oh, I love that person as a kid, or, oh, I wonder whatever happened to them. And it's just something that, I enjoyed watching. When I'm doing the interviews, I'm sure the same thing for both of you. Like, I'm a fan. Whoever I'm talking to is a fan. It might not even be someone that I really knew much about as a kid, but I love hearing stories. I love talking to them and hearing their stories. And I also love, the work that they did. And they tell me some behind the scenes stuff, which is just fascinating.
We've talked a lot on our show about how pop culture is culture, our collective experience, and even our way of life. Do you have any insights on the significance of pop culture?
Well, I mean, you just said it there. It's that shared experience, which is, it's not as prevalent today, I think. Well, it is and it isn't, because, there were less avenues when we were kids. So if something like was on, everyone was watching the same thing. And it's not that way anymore. You have so many different choices. I mean, but there's, you are closer in some respects because of social media, that I can know what's going on in Israel. I can know what's going on in Japan, like at the, blink of an eye, which that wasn't the case when we were kids. But like, I remember vividly the Challenger explosion. I remember vividly, Reagan saying, tear down that wall, because it was there were so many less avenues that we all watch the same thing at the same time. So it is that definitely that shared experience for me at least. That's probably the closest definition I could think with that.
Yeah, when I think about benchmarks or moments in my life, they typically revolve around pop culture. Like in elementary school, one of my most vivid memories, when The Simpsons came out, I was the first kid in my school with a Simpsons t-shirt. And then like the next day, my memory recalls everyone else was wearing a Simpsons t-shirt. So there was like this shared experience of this new cool thing. And now looking back, it's obviously very retro and nostalgic.
I just say from your earliest memories is I'm much older than both of you, probably. But yes, so the things that I mentioned are probably way before your, I guess memories maybe. There was one thing Michael Jackson did the moonwalk for the first time. It was like I think of the Motown special on TV. The next day, everyone was talking about it. Everyone was talking about that moment, and then all of a sudden, everyone was doing the moonwalk. Everyone was trying to do the moonwalk, and where beforehand, I didn't see anyone doing it. So yes, it's just that all that thing that we see together and at the same time, it's just ingrained in us. Like just that like again, that shared moment. It's just you can't beat that. And all these news things that we see now, like from before, like I said, it's we all saw it at the same time.
Enjoying the show? Click like and subscribe. Often on Amusing Jews, Jonathan and I are amazed that we're actually talking to people who, under ordinary circumstances, we'd only be admiring from afar. What are some of your standout interviews?
First, I'm flattered. I assumed you meant me, but thank you. But I'm flattered by that. Yeah, no, it's there's so many. For different reasons, different people. Like whenever someone comes on, like I said, I'm a fan of all these people. Otherwise, why reach out to someone? I reach out to people that I'm interested in. Like Tommy Chong came on one time, and I was just like, I'm talking to Tommy Chong. I'm talking to Paul Williams. We did one recently with John Bynett, people that I was, fans of as a kid. But we've also interviewed a lot of celebrities that, just TV, like Little House on the Prairie or like Mr. Belvedere. So those stand out. But a couple that really stand out to me, and no one's going to know the name probably, is Mino Palouse. And Mino Palouse was everywhere when I was a kid. He was on a lot of shows. He was in a lot of commercials and things like that. But he was on my favorite show growing up, and that's the show Voyagers. It was a time travel show, and I loved that show. It was my favorite show as a kid. So when I got to talk to him, that was the little kid in me coming out. That was one of the things that just really maybe sit there this leaning forward and just wanting to hear everything about it because I love that show so much. So we might have had guests who have bigger name recognition, but that one really stood out to me just because it hit a spot within me. But there are other things too. They're like everyone, like I said, I'm a fan of. One that blew me away a little bit, the movie The Mummy, the Brendan Fraser movie, The Mummy. So the one who played one of the bad guys in there, Benny, Kevin J. O'Connor, he reached out one day. I got an email one day from him introducing himself, saying he was a fan of pop culture retro. And that just blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind that someone like that was watching our show, our YouTube, thing that it's like, to me, it's like we're putting out like in my mind, it's like, it's a nice thing, but it's like, just two buddies putting out a little show there. And so when he said he was a fan, that just blew me away. And, he came on the show eventually, and it was so surreal to me that someone that, for a movie that I loved said that he was a fan of what we were doing. So again, those type of things really stand out to me as just surreal and mind-blowing, and makes me sit in awe a little bit.
Yeah, I think another thing about the world of podcasts is that it gives ordinary people like us a chance to reach out to these people that would be just, untouchable otherwise. But also it allows for like an easy conversation with people who, again, under ordinary circumstances, we just kind of know the character, the on stage or the behind the scenes version, and we don't know anything about them really.
Well, I don't know if you've had the experience. I mean, I've been doing this now, I guess this will be the fifth year, I guess maybe 21, 22, 23, 24. Yeah, this will be the fifth. We're in the middle of the fifth year of doing it. So almost everyone has been just really nice. And that's been the thing that stands out also, that these people that I admire are just really nice people. And I don't know, I'll ask you, I won't mention names for me. I've only had like one or two who I thought were not so nice. Like I said, no names, but for the over 99.9% of the people have been really great. The thing that does get to me though is sometimes they will tell stories of other celebrities that they worked with, which are not so nice. And I was a big fan of, and I was like, oh, really? That they're like that? So that I found that too. So I got the good and the bad of it. Sometimes, it's just so great and seeing that these are real people. And sometimes they shattered my illusion of someone else.
You also host The Jewish Lens, an interview show looking at anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. How do you define a Jewish perspective for the purposes of your show?
If it's mine, I'll say it's a Jewish perspective. If it's my perspective, but no, it depends who I'm interviewing. I'll say that if I'm interviewing a celebrity or just an author or something, it's just a regular talk like we're doing now. But I've had on people specifically because of the subjects that they deal with, and like how does this affect the Jews? How does this affect as a greater thing, not just me, not just people here, all over the world. And I'll say for a couple of people I've had on, Dumasani Washington. I don't know if you know who that is. He's like the president of the Black Jewish Alliance. He's very staunchly pro-Israel. He's speaks out in defense of the Jewish people a lot. And so that was good to get how Jews are being treated. He sees the anti-Semitism. He calls it out. I had on Hillel Fold, who's a big, he lives in Israel, calls out anti-Semitism all the time, wants people to wake up to what's going on around them. So again, how does this affect all of us? Not just affect, me, not just affect you two, or, just affect Jews in a larger scale. So things like that, I think, like, I wear two different hats with that. Like sometimes it's just a nice, general conversation. Sometimes it's lot more serious. One of the first guests I had on actually was, I don't know if you heard, Jeff Scoop. Really nice guy, which is gonna odd when I tell you who he is now. He's the former head of one of the largest neo-Nazi movements in the United States. So he's one of the people that did the 180. He saw the error's ways. Now he works extensively with the Simon Wiesenthal Center. He goes around speaking about hate. So someone like that, again, this is how he hated Jews. He grew up hating Jews. And he said that no one has been kinder to him in his life now that he sees it than the Jewish people. So this is something like, like I said, it's two different hats. One could be just a nice, friendly conversation, and that's just a me perspective. And the other piece of people like that is, I think, like a broader Jewish perspective.
Did you have that sense when you started the show, or is it just kind of evolved in that way?
It just kind of evolved in that way. It was just, originally I was just going to say, I didn't know who I was going to have on. And this is also, the Jewish Lens came about after October 7th. I was doing the pop culture retro thing still. And for a while after that, after October 7th, I felt very helpless, like a lot of other Jewish people. I felt helpless. I felt angered and enraged about things that were going on around me. And anti-Semitism was just exploding like everywhere. And I said, I want to do something. I feel helpless, useless, sitting on the side, not doing anything. And I posted a lot on Facebook about it, but you only reach your friend list on Facebook or Twitter. You get attacked, by non-Jews, like not non-Jews, people that, the anti-Semites too. If you put anything, you put down Jewish. I put down an episode of The Jewish Lens, I get trolls coming down, about, baby killers or whatever. Or just, it could be, I can be interviewing a celebrity and they just come and attack for that. So I felt like I wanted to do something more. And, I'm a writer. I wrote posts, I wrote little things, but it wasn't enough. Felt it wasn't reaching enough. Not that I reach a lot of people in the Jewish Lens, but I wanted to do what I could to amplify Jewish voices, like you're doing. That put it out there, give some platform to Jewish people, and that was really where this started from. So that was my goal for this, and that's I was toying with it for months, and until I finally did it. And now it's got to the point too, and that people reach out to me, hey, can we come on the show? And I love that. I absolutely love that aspect, and I'll never say no. I'll never say no to anyone that asks. If anyone hears this, I'll never say no. Come on, because I want to give you a platform. I want to give you a voice to speak out. It doesn't have to be anything important. It could just be like, we're doing just shooting the breeze, talking about someone's book, talking about someone's what they're doing in life or whatever. That's all that matters to me, is that it's a Jewish aspect, and I will gladly help out with that. what you two are doing is fantastic. I think also, and I think anyone who does this is doing us a big service now. And it's not, patting your own back. It's just, I think it's needed now. I think it's definitely something that has to be out there to combat all these disparaging, people talking about anti-Semitic things or bad-mouthing things with Jews or whatever. So I think anyone that does anything like this is doing a great service.
I totally agree. There is sort of that two pronged reason for doing Amusing Jews as well. One of it, of course, is just to talk to people who are interesting and fun like you. And the other part of it is hopefully someone will watch it and say, you know what, maybe Jews aren't so bad after all.
You've written a number of books, mostly for young readers, including Night of the Living Cuddle Bunnies, a funny, scary book in the vein of Goosebumps. What attracted you to this genre?
I love spooky, funny things. People talk about this a lot with horror. Even though I write and it can be considered within the horror genre, straight horror, I'm not really a fan of. It's especially slasher films I hate. I just, you killing for the sake of killing. But when you have movies like Shaun of the Dead or Lost Boys or Fright Night, things like that where it combines humor and horror, I love that because the two go so well together because you can get that scare, but also kind of poke fun of it a little bit, try to ease the tension with the humor involved. So some of it is just, when you see zombies attacking, it's ludicrous thinking of, but it is scary, but it is ludicrous to think about. And I like when someone points out the ludicrousness of it a little bit too. So I do love that humor horror element. And that's where I've written several things in. I try to incorporate humor in a lot of the things that I do anyway. Just even if it's I have a book out on submission now which is like a thriller. I'll talk about that after. But even in the most tense times during that book, I try to put in some jokes because humor is such a great way to cut the tension and let the people breathe for a second too. But humor and horror do go very, very well together. And the second book you meant, Night of the Living Cuddle Bunnies, there was another one follow up from Sunset to Sunrise, which is kind of vampires too. So it's they're talking about whether or not it counts if you put garlic powder as opposed to garlic. They're having that whole conversation with that. Or if I put if I don't have holy water, what can I use? If I don't have steaks, can I get pencils? Things like that. Just talking about the genre, poking fun at the tropes a little bit like that. I think is fun for people.
Yeah, I actually just rewatched The Lost Boys a couple days ago, and there is that wonderful playing with the tropes in that too, where they, not to spoil a movie from, I don't know, 40 years
40
ago.
years ago, yes.
But, this idea that when you invite a vampire over to your house, whatever you do to him doesn't actually work. So he can still see himself in a mirror and the garlic doesn't do anything. That whole aspect of playing with the tropes. And I think the horror comedy genre, at least from my experience, began with Bride of Frankenstein.
Yes, I do. I do think that has its moments, but the Abbott and Costello with Frankenstein movies, that was a perfect example. I think that was one of the earliest, I think, that really did a great job of crossing the two together. And by the way, just think this is a Jewish podcast. I will mention the other book you mentioned at the beginning, The Coming of Age. I'm very proud of that one too. I helped co-edit it. It's Coming of Age. It's 13 B'nai Mitzvah stories, and I got 13 different authors to write different individual stories about Bar. Not some could be funny, some could be science fiction, some would be autobiographical, but there are 13 different stories which are for that age, and makes a perfect bar mitzvah gift, bat mitzvah gift.
Are you working on any new projects?
So many new projects. It's always like juggling, and I should probably stick to one thing and just finish it, but it's always like juggling projects. I have two books out, so I have two different agents. So I have an agent for my adult work and an agent for my kidlit stuff. So each one has something on submission. One's a thriller that I mentioned, which takes place in part in the 40s, part in the 80s, and they converge together a little bit. Also, it's a very Jewish themed story. To my agent has out now. She just had two things: one a spooky western and one a spooky anthology. But I am working on a humorous nonfiction. I am working on a screenplay, and a rom-com. I love. And a rom-com, and also, yes, another four things, actually. And the rom-com is the first time for me trying, and I love the genre. And I'm also working on a kind of another middle grade book, which very Jewish themed as well, which is like an alternate reality type book. So let's see what happens with everything.
Thanks so much for joining us, Jonathan.
No, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun, and I got to speak to you, Jonathan, a little bit on the Jewish lens, and like that'll be out soon. And Joey, if you ever want to come on, you're more than welcome to as well.
And to our audience, now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.